this planet.
I've just told you
No,
the biological determinism, and you've even acknowledged that fact.
they're just people with
Right?
mental
There are
illnesses.
studies. I can
Remember,
provide
whatever
you
label they want to
studies
put on it is
that
what they can
show
put
the
on the shit, but
biological
it's mental
determinism.
illness.
I can provide you these studies. Right?
I ain't
You
need
have
no
to
studies.
either accept the reality or I don't know, just be in like make-believe world. I don't know what to tell you. Watch more Fox News and pretend that Donald Trump isn't destroying your economy before your eyes.
First Amender is at it again, debating someone on whether or not trans women are women. You know, the same losing argument that he insists on losing on time and time again. This time, he debates a random person, I guess, that called in to debate him on this. You can tell by this little smug smile that he has on his face that he thinks he's got all the facts and that he's going to own this dude, but you'll see that doesn't quite work out. So let's see how this goes down.
You're on the line with First Amender. How are you doing?
What's going on, First Amender?
Hey, you know, I recognize this voice. Is this American?
It may or may not.
All right. Hi, American. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I said trans men and women are not women and are men and women.
Trans women are not really women? I mean, if you're referring to, are you referring to the sex or the gender? Because I'm referring to the gender.
I'm referring to both.
Is there a difference between those two?
Nope.
There's no difference between sex and gender?
Nope.
Can you imagine the word, a concept such as manly woman? Does that make any sense to you?
No.
No way. Doesn't exist. You can't think of a manly woman?
I can think of a masculine woman.
Okay. So
that has
what is that?
tendencies.
What is that? What is that incongruence?
That usually comes from like daddy issues and like childhood trauma. And,
yeah.
like,
What is
that?
What is that incongruence?
Incongruence. Can
yeah,
you talk to me like I'm a first grader, bro?
Oh, sure. What is that difference that seems to be there, right? What do we call that, right? Like there's like what is typical of your sex, and then there's something that is not typical to your sex. What is that? What is that? What would you call that?
Call it personality.
Their personality? Is that it? Yep. Why is it opposite to their sex?
Like I said, childhood trauma, usually mommy or daddy issues of some kind.
Well, for regular people, we call that gender. Right? It's called gender. Right? You yourself are already exhibiting the difference between sex and gender. So understanding that to be the case, when I'm saying that that a trans woman is a woman, I'm referring to their gender, not their sex.
Well, I don't know then, because I'm referring to both at the same level.
At the same level?
Yeah, gender.
Well,
and
you've already created the distinction. I
gender.
did not need to walk you to it. You got there on your own. Right?
No,
gender and sex are different.
A woman could be masculine and a man could be feminine, but that doesn't make them a.
So what is that incongruence? What
woman.
do we call that incongruent?
First Amender already lost. He keeps trying to differentiate, saying, well, gender is different from sex, which even if I grant him that, yes, gender and sex are different, which I'm not sure if I personally believe that, but let's say even if I grant him that, if he's talking about gender expression, yes, there can be feminine men and there can be masculine women. It still doesn't make them men or women. If a man is effeminate, doesn't mean he's a woman. He's just an effeminate man. We don't judge which gender they are, or I guess in his case, since I'll grant that to him, we don't judge what sex they are by how they act. We judge them by their biological features, which no matter how they act upstairs, it's not going to change any of their biological features.
No, that's not a proper correlation.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Sure it is.
A masculine woman has a vagina between her legs as much as a feminine woman does, bro.
Yeah.
You don't need to help me out with anything. Don't go Google search and type and let's use our brains and our thoughts. No internet, Amender. Just freestyle this.
Well, I was going to present you something.
No, I was just go off the cuff.
Are you aware that being trans has a root in biological determinism?
It does not.
Yes, it does.
There's nothing biological about being trans.
Did you know that we've analyzed trans people's brains and found that there are portions of the brain that are physically different sizes?
Than compared to cisgender people? Skull and like take a piece of their brain and look at it? Like,
no,
what did you
use an MRI scan there, silly.
So if I do blackface, am I black?
I mean, but you're representing like black. I mean, kind of
So
disrespectfully.
if I painted myself black and I'm walking around in the street, because I know you like to do that thing, is what somebody looks like
yeah.
is what you. So if I look black,
I mean, if you
black?
were born looking black, people would think you're black.
Well, I wasn't born looking black, just like these people.
I'm saying if you were born looking black,
sounding like
you would be
men
black.
that are women.
But no, there are trans women that absolutely show a neurochemical determinism.
So I want to point it out to everybody that right now he's using biology right now. So now he's trying to appeal to a biological argument. Remember this for later.
I mean, they are born with that.
How do they know though? Like they stick a syringe in their brain and pull some fluid out and examine that shit under a fucking electron microscope.
They can also analyze their blood through endocrinology.
Analyze their blood.
Yep.
What do they find in their blood?
They have different hormones than what is typical of cisgendered people. This is another instance of biological determinism.
Cisgendered people.
Yes, people who say that they are transgender have different hormones than what is exhibited as typical among people. And this is FYI, right? Pre-hormone replacement therapy.
So you're talking about like a tomboy.
Yeah. People like that, yes, they typically have different hormones than what is sex typical. Correct, right?
So
that would have a root in biological determinism.
Man. A tomboy is a trans man.
It depends on how they feel internally.
Depends how they feel internally.
Yes. Yeah, there's the external gender expression
how they feel
and then the
internally.
internal gender expression. Really what it does come down to is a person's internal gender expression, because gender is a complex subject and has multiple factors that are involved that may not necessarily derive the biological determinism into somebody feeling like that they are a woman in a man's body or a man in a woman's body.
And that's not how it works at all.
Yes, it is. That's exactly how it works.
I refuse the premise.
I get that you refuse the premise, but this is actually very common of Republicans, where they tend to not want to hear any facts. They don't want to hear any of the studies. They don't want to understand the biological determinism, and they just want to be hateful towards trans people.
This is one thing that's annoying about First Amender, is that as soon as you say that you just disagree and that you don't hear it, well, then he starts to just insult you because you're a Republican. This guy has such a bias and hate. See, he judges us. He says that we're hateful, but yet you could see he has a hatred and a prejudice against right-wingers and Republicans for the reasons that he just listed. So I wish that was something that he could recognize, that, okay, again, I'm not even saying we're hateful, because we're not hateful. We're not arguing against transgenderism because we just hate them. There's actually reasons why we do it. But he assumes we're doing it out of hate, and he hates us because he assumes we're doing it out of hate, which actually makes him the hateful one, which actually makes him everything he's accusing us of being.
So, yeah, I'm not here. I didn't wake up today and say, I want to be a shitty person and put trans people in a blender, okay? I didn't do that today, Amender. I don't do that any day. I don't think I've ever done it.
I mean, you're revoking trans people right now.
I'm not revoking them. Like
sure
I
you are.
said,
You said that they don't exist. Did you not? I'm sorry. Did you not say that they don't exist?
I would love to know what these people mean when they say, you're saying trans people don't exist. What does that mean? I genuinely don't understand. Like, we acknowledge that there are people out there that suffer from a mental illness, that think they are, that they're the opposite, that they are one gender trapped in the opposite gender's body. Like, I recognize that they exist. But even if I said that's not a thing, let's say I just acknowledge that no, there are no people who really believe that. They're just doing it because of reasons. How would that make me hateful? If I said, yeah, I don't believe leprechauns are real, does that mean I hate leprechauns? What does he mean by that? And what do these people in general mean by that?
People exist, but they have a mental illness, which is okay.
So you believe that they have a mental illness?
Correct.
Tell me, is them being trans a mental illness?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's to call it trans, because there's just something wrong in their brain.
Okay. Well, did you know that what they actually diagnose as the mental disorder is actually the gender dysphoria, right? and not being trans in and of itself. Did you know that there are trans people that don't have gender dysphoria?
Yeah, they're socially trans, quote, quote.
Yep. So they would get what is called gender euphoria, which doesn't actually have any instance of there being a medical mental disorder. This is actually why the DSM had changed the gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria in order to account that the problem isn't necessarily being trans. The problem is the dysphoric feeling that they get when they are trans.
Nobody is trans, though.
But why would they feel dysphoric when they're trans? Why would they feel like that in the first place? That would be like saying, see, this is why they don't consider schizophrenia a mental illness. It's the voices that they hear in their head, because it would be like, what? Yeah, but why do they feel dysphoric in the first place? Because they have a mental illness. It's not common sense. First Amender, like, he likes to rely on these studies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying studies and data in it and in itself are bad and you could never trust them. I am not saying that. But this dude relies too much, where he just throws all of his common sense out the window and just goes, well, this paper over here written by someone said it. Like, first of all, that's stupid right there. An over-reliance on authority, because if you are a man and you believe that you are inside really a woman and you are trapped in the opposite gender's body, I don't need to look at a paper or some kind of study or something to know that, yeah, something is wrong with that person. It would be like if someone walked up and said, this arm, my right arm, isn't really my right arm, therefore I need to get it amputated because it's not mine. I don't control it. It is not my arm. You wouldn't sit there and be like, oh yeah, it makes complete sense. You were born with the wrong arm. And this study over here says that you were born with the wrong arm. No, you would say, yeah, listen, something's going on up there. I think they need to get their head checked or something. You wouldn't just lean into the idea like, they were born with someone else's arm on them.
There's not a single
trans people don't exist
on this planet.
I've just told you the biological determinism, and you've even acknowledged that fact.
They're just people with
right?
mental
There are
illness.
studies. I can provide you studies that show the biological determinism. I can provide you these studies. Right? You have to either accept the reality or I don't know, just be in like make-believe world. I don't know what to tell you. Watch more Fox News and pretend that Donald Trump isn't destroying your economy before your eyes.
See, more hateful rhetoric from First Amender, one Amender, with this hateful, bigoted rhetoric against Republicans. Why do these libs all think we just watched Fox News? Do you think that's the only right-wing outlet out there is just Fox News? All you libbies out there watching this, only boomer Republicans or conservatives watch Fox News. The rest of us don't watch Fox News.
All right, I don't know where Donald Trump came from in this. I don't know where Fox News.
Well, I'm saying it's Republicans argue this position because
okay, well,
they like
I don't
to
watch
revoke
Fox
the existence
News.
of trans
I don't even
people.
pay attention to what Donald Trump has been doing. So.
Okay.
But no, First Amender. You can't just make that argument.
Well, I did, and it is rooted in biological determinism, and I'm able to substantiate that, right? Ask yourself, why did gender identity disorder change in the DSM-5 to gender dysphoria? Why would they make such a distinction?
So you're saying there's a distinction between the social, quote unquote, transgender and then the mental illness of transgender.
So being trans isn't
so
a mental disorder.
It's a mental illness.
Gender dysphoria is the mental disorder.
So on one hand, he's trying to argue that it's not a mental disorder, but he's saying the gender dysphoria is the mental disorder. So it is a mental disorder, but it's not a mental disorder.
Right, it's a mental disorder. Now, people can the person be
so
socially
being
gay?
Trans is not a mental disorder.
Can someone be socially
No,
gay?
I need you to own that. Being trans is
I'm
not a mental
owning
disorder.
Nothing. It is a mental. It is 100% a mental disorder,
you're
mental illness.
Yourself. At one point, you're saying
No.
being trans is a mental disorder, but the gender dysphoria is a mental disorder. I've already told you that there are trans people that don't have gender dysphoria, right? So if there are trans people that don't have gender dysphoria, that means being trans in and of itself is not a mental disorder.
So this is where First Amender contradicts himself bigly. So on one hand, it's not a mental disorder, But on the other hand, he just got done explaining how it is some kind of mental disorder. Also, he spent all that time talking about the biology behind it and whatnot, the science of it and whatnot, the studies that they've done on the brains and stuff. But then he just says right now, but not all trans people have gender dysphoria. What? So then basically he's admitting that there's a lot of people who claim to be trans that aren't really trans? So this dude right here believes that if a man just says he's a woman and says he feels like a woman, you know, he's Shania Twain, he feels like a woman. You know, as long as they do that, as long as they sing the little song, they should be able to go into a woman's bathroom. So if I am just dressed as myself right now, I'm dressed as myself, I'm a tomboy, you know, I'm a tomboy woman. I feel like a tomboy woman, right? Where I'm expressing more of a masculine femininity, right? I could just dress like this. I should be able to walk into the women's restroom, even if I don't suffer from gender dysphoria. See, this whole time I thought this jerk off right here thought he was just advocating, like I thought he just thought, you know, all these people here just suffered from some kind of gender dysphoria or something. But he's even admitting right now that not all trans people suffer from gender dysphoria. So the ones that don't suffer from gender dysphoria, the ones that just want to wear a dress or identify as a woman, you just want them to be in women's sports and to go into women's restrooms and women's locker rooms and women's prisons and just be in women's spaces? What? That's insane.
No, they're just delusional.
I need you to own
Or they have a very strong imagination. I ain't owning anything. Because these people are just delusional, especially if they're like socially quote unquote trans.
Given
like,
that I cannot,
those people can't even be included.
Given the fact that we are not going to be seeing eye to eye on this, I don't know what else to tell you at this point. I mean, you can be in delusional world, but I'm going to be in the constant reading studies and learning more about this particular subject. So I'm always firmly grounded in an empirical basis. Do you have any last words?
You said an empirical.
So this dude thinks he's grounded just because he's reading propaganda from smart people. You know, because scientists, they can't have any agendas whatsoever. They're always just unbiased. They're always neutral. You know, it's not like there's any scientist first amenders or anything like that that have this wacko ideology that's going to be influencing any of these studies. Needless to say, it's hilarious how First Amender thinks he's grounded, even though he thinks men should be able to use women's restrooms.
Really? I find that hard to believe. I mean, have you ever heard the
Again,
story
you
of
didn't
John
want to
Money?
see the studies and you're not interested in the discussion, so it's over right here. This is the end of the debate. So do you have anything else for me?
Yeah, have you ever heard the legend of John Money?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
He's a pretty gross guy, and he should have lost his license, and he did.
And what about the quote-unquote, all this, you know, the transgender shit that came from that?
Yeah, I mean, he was involved in gender research. There are gross scientists that do gross things. However, the research continues going on forward. There's really no lack of the validity behind the subject. Right? We don't even use John Money's studies anymore. It's not really something that's even relevant in 2025.
I mean, it's still relevant to me because I've seen no difference
Yeah, I know,
between
'cause you
him and
hate
any of
trans
these other
people. I get
weird
it.
scientists
Anyway,
and doctors who update the DSM-5.
It was nice talking to you, America, and you have yourself a fabulous day.
Okay, Amender, transform into a dragoon real quick.
Hey, First Amender, have you heard of the Swedish paper?
What did you think of that?
So it's like American,
Dude,
just
like,
like
I
your,
swear, like, just a second.
transgender
It's like
reply
I
guy.
think Eric is just like one of those type of people who's like looking at trans people and thinking, it's like, oh my god, it's like, why do I want to fuck a trans person so bad? It's like they must be evil, right? Like I must hate them. I've never heard somebody talking as much about trans people as he does. Like literally all his conversations are about trans people. It's just crazy all the time.
I'm going to provide a quick study. I love this study. I need to have this on quick dial, this study. Hold on. Let me find it. Hold on. I have to find it. Is homophobia associated with homosexual arousal? You could send this to any homophobe and it makes them lose their mind. The authors investigated the
That's
role
fine,
of homosexual arousal in exclusively heterosexual men who admitted negative effect towards homosexual individuals. Participants consisted of a group of homophobic men, 35, and a group of non-homophobic men, 29. They were assigned to groups on the basis of their scores and index of homophobia, and the men were exposed to sexually explicit erotic stimuli consisting of heterosexual, male, homosexual, and lesbian videotapes, and changes in penile circumference were monitored. They also completed an aggression questionnaire. Both groups exhibited increases in penile circumference to the heterosexual and female homosexual videos. Only the homophobic men showed an increase in penile erection to male homosexual stimuli. The groups did not differ in aggression. Homophobia is apparently associated with homosexual arousal that the homophobic individual is either unaware of or denies.
So very big brain takes at the end right there. Yes, obviously, we just hate trans people, and the reason we hate them is because we are just so sexually attracted to them. Yeah, you know that masculine dude over there in the dress and the wig? Oh, that's what it is. It's just we really hate how attracted we are to them, and therefore we just want them gone. We just want them gone because we can't control ourselves. Big brain take right there. As for that study that he showed, it's not exactly the most reliable study because for one, well, how do they determine who's a homophobe or not? I believe they asked him a questionnaire, but what kind of questions did they ask? Like, how did they determine what is a homophobe and who is a homophobe? I mean, that's a whole thing in itself. Also, the sample size was so small, doesn't really mean anything. But even if I grant that and said, oh, yes, it is true, but he wants to feel better about himself in this cope session, be like, yeah. Again, their big brain take, just they don't like it because they're just so sexually attracted to them. You know, the liberals always use that argument, oh, you hate something because you're just so attracted to them. Like, what's up with that? It's always about sex with these people. Once again, Mender doesn't even realize like how badly like he loses these things. And that's why he can't honestly debate people on this topic, because he loses so badly and he gets so upset when he loses such an obvious black or white topic. See, he goes from trying to appeal to studies in biology, but then later on he admits, well, not all people have gender dysphoria that are trans. Well, then why are you bothering to bring up the biology then? But even if I were to grant First Amender everything that he said, and I just went ahead and said, you know what, First Amender, you are correct in everything that you had to say. All of those studies are correct. You are 100% correct here. The next question is, now, why do we need to let these men use the women's restroom? Why do we need now to let these men play in women's sports where it is not fair to the women? He is so focused on the feelings of these trans people that he just disregards, you know, these people like to pride themselves on empathy. I'm just a good, caring, empathetic person, and I'm a tolerant person. And you know what? When I say that a trans man should use the women's restroom, it's because I'm an empath and I empathize with these trans women. Well, where is your empathy for these women that have to deal with it? Where is it at? Where? Show me where you have any empathy for these women that have to compete with these men that have an advantage over them because men are just biologically, Mr. Biology over here, biologically stronger in general to women. Why should I allow a trans woman to, why should I allow a man to use the women's restroom because he thinks he's a woman? How do I know if he really thinks he's a woman and this is just his gender expression? Or how do I know he's just not some kind of creepy perv? There is no way to tell, which is why we have this rule. Women over here, men over here. This is your bathroom. This is your bathroom. How about men getting placed in women's prisons? What about those women that are in danger over there? Do you care about any of those women? You know, maybe he hates us because First Amender is actually so attracted to us, huh? Maybe I should use the First Amender argument. Maybe First Amender is actually just really attracted to Republicans, and that's why he hates us so much. But what do you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you really enjoyed this. And if you really like seeing First Amender make a fool out of himself time and time again with his immaturity, then I have more videos featuring First Amender along with a lot more on my channel that I think you'll enjoy.